Okay, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio, podcast for martial artists, Ninjutsu practitioners, self-defense folks. You know who you are. Anyway, Daishian Miller here from Warrior Concepts. It's been another week, right? So I'll give everybody an update on what's going on with the dojo post-fire. So if you're new to this, I don't know, you have to check back on a couple of other things or join us over on Facebook or whatever. But I want to keep the lessons going, right? So here we are. What is this? Episode 264. So the focus, and again, I was just covering this with a student the other day, where they were having a hard time getting their head wrapped around this idea that Kamae, these postures that we have, right? They have stance-like qualities on the surface in the beginning of our training, in first, maybe even second level transmission of the lessons, right? But they're way more than that. Okay, but this one isn't isolated to just them or just a few students, right? Most people think of Kamae as just a stance, right? Something you take up right before the fight, right? Cool pose, whatever, right? Or during a technique or something like that, right? But what if I told you that that's the smallest part of what Kamae really is, right? I mean, I would be pushing it to say that it's a third. Okay, we'll talk about that here in a bit. But let me give you an example of a difference outside of a fight, right? This past week, I guess we're at 2 weeks now, right? June 2nd, right? So where are we? 2 weeks, right? When the dojo building caught fire. Well, it didn't caught fire. I guess, it did catch fire, but somebody was being unsafe and caused an explosion. And anyway, but either way, right? And you can check with Sensei Alexander. You can check with my other student, Alan, that was there, right? I wasn't in any physical stance, unless you're counting Shizen as a, whatever, right? I wasn't in a stance, but I was in Kamae, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? Not woo-woo spiritually, right? Don't take things in that direction, okay? So Kamae is in a shape, right? What I want to kind of lean into during this episode is that Kamae is a signal. It's a communication, right? It's body language, and then some, right? It's a way of taking control of yourself, of the situation, right? And you're doing this long before anyone else even realizes what's happening. Okay? No one should ever know that a ninja is doing what they're doing, right? They can't see it. They see things, but I'm not quite sure. The question pops up: how the hell did you stay so calm when all your stuff could have been burning? What the hell else was I supposed to do, right? I can't make any decisions until I know which way things are going, right? I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill, all those other things, right? So this episode, right, the lesson I want to focus on, again, isn't about form. It's about presence, okay? And how, as let's just call it as a modern warrior, right? Your Kamae can shape the outcome of a confrontation. It can shape the outcome of a conversation or even a crisis, right? So this is the kind of thing that's almost never taught. But it's absolutely felt when it matters most, right? So let's do that. Let's talk about the hidden purpose of Kamae, right? And how it might be, my humble opinion, Okay. The most powerful tool you've been, maybe not you guys are all enlightened, right? But that most students, they've probably been overlooking in their training. Okay. So that's what we'll focus on. I'll jump back more into it when we get back. Right. So let's just kind of roll the intro and I'll see you on the other side.
So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio. Real training for real people in a real world.
And we're back. All right. So before we jump into things, and I sound like I'm repeating myself or whatever. James, who do we have on who's already signed in? Who do I need to say hi to? James is busy on the other side working on a website problem that we have. And we're in the middle of an argument between two service providers, and it's affecting my stuff, and I don't like it. He doesn't like it either. I'm tired of messing around with these people. Anyway, who's on? What do we have?
So far, Trinity, Dave, Jared, Terrence, and Greg from Australia.
Awesome. All right, some of our regulars. Other ones will probably be drifting in as we go. They'll get that. You know what? I didn't plug in. I don't think did I plug in a reminder? I don't think I plugged in a reminder email tonight, so we might be a little short because people tend to like come in after I know that thing got sent out. So anyway, it's been a busy, I'd say day, but it's been a busy 2 weeks. Finally got, I think the last of the stuff that we are salvaging or trying to salvage out of the current location, and moved over into temporary storage as we start to set up the new location. So if you're on Facebook, I don't know if I sent out a picture today via email, but I know I posted something on Facebook. I need to copy some things over. Just been really busy days trying to work this end of things, make sure that lessons are going out, and also doing this transition. So it's just a lot of stuff. So anyway, so where are we? We have secured a location. I posted up a picture of the current location as it looks, right? Ceiling tiles are down. There's a bunch of, not a bunch, but there's a few items that need to be taken care of before the local people who want to be something allow us to move in and finalize things and all that. It's going to take at least a week to get that stuff done. And when I say at least, like if it was up to us, I mean, James knows because he's been helping, but we took care of stuff really fast. But we're at a point now where as we do things, we're going to have to wait for the bureaucrats to come in and sign off on things, and so we can finalize things. So that's kind of where things are. We are literally, well, not literally, the location where a lot of you met me before we moved to the current location, the one that was involved in the fire fiasco. We moved there about 11 years ago, 11 and a half, 11 and a couple, something. We were on the same street, on the same block, just at the other end. Our building wasn't on the corner, literally on the corner. This one is. So we're within the same block. We're just down. So for those of you who are local to the area, or at some point when you might want to come to visit or whatever, the new address for the dojo makeover, redo, whatever, okay, is 314 Market Street, Sunbury, here in Pennsylvania. If you're looking things up, zip code is 17801 if you need it. If not, don't worry about it. I can't give any phone numbers or anything yet until I know whether or not Verizon is going to do what they did to us 11 years ago and make us change numbers. Why they would, everybody that talks to me is like, no, technology. And yeah, I know technology was supposed to be that way last time too. Verizon, took over the area, but for some reason, the mapping for numbers still went back to some antiquated thing when multiple phone companies were in the area before Verizon bought them all out and whatever. So I make no assumptions. Okay. It's just like the night of the fire, right, James? We made no assumptions. We just watched the activity and noted the activity of the firefighters and how that related to our space. But there was no conjecture. There was no assumptions. There were a couple of verbalized hopes, right? Like when we watched them walk a big ass fire hose into the building, right? Like, but there were contingencies that were discussed based on if we see this, if we, whatever, right? But nothing can be finalized until things go on. But either way, right? We were all pretty, I don't know, Shizen like, I would think, right? Just kind of watching and observing and, so, but this week we begin, like I said, the build out on the new place. The Kamiza wall has already been chosen, and but there's a couple of things we have to take care of before we can even start get that stuff taken care of. So anyway, that's where we are, and we'll keep moving forward. So let's see what else is new. Terrence is always on, right? Terrence is one of our new guys on our I always call it our business, our growth team, right? Terrence has taken over helping out with like social posting and things like that. So if you see a lot more video clips and maybe a difference in design and things like that, he always runs things past me, but you see a lot more, that's all him, right? So I'm pretty pleased so far, and I'm sure it'll just keep getting better. Hopefully not worse for everybody, but it's the way the algorithms work and the way the even for the emails and things like that, right? If people engage, don't engage, not everybody sees everything, believe it or not. So as a matter of fact, I think on the social platforms, what is it, James? Something like only 6% of our list sees any given post. Even those who regularly engage with things, you're still not seeing everything. Okay. Not by a long shot, because Facebook and the different sites want us to, boost things, throw money at things to buy ads. And, it's about them growing themselves. Not a bad business model. However, but just, if you haven't seen anything in a while, I would highly recommend that you scroll back in your feed, find something that you got from us or that you did receive, and do everything you can, like, share, post a comment or something like that. So you program their algorithm, at least in part, that you want to see things. Okay. Anyway, anybody else jump on, James, that I should say hi to before we jump into things?
Maui said good evening, and Jimmy dropped his konbanwa.
Awesome. All right. Jimmy's weekly konbanwa. Awesome. All right. Cool beans. All right. In that case, let me just bring up my notes. I don't want to miss out or miss anything. So I will check back in. We'll do Q&A at different points along the way here. But anyway, let's see. Why? Scroll. Okay. Again, just as a quick reminder, just, do us a favor, like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever options you have on the different sites that you're on. That way, one, you help us out in the different programs, these algorithms on these different platforms. It shows engagement, and it shows that people are actually interested in things, and then they will move us up on site on listings, right? So somebody does a search for martial arts podcast or whatever will move up those things. But it also helps get this stuff out to other people who are definitely looking for it and would benefit from it. All right, so let's just jump into things, right? So again, I'm on Kamae again, right? But again, these things are so broad and so again, we're talking about a basic, right? We're talking about a not even a kihon no kihon, right? A fundamental of the fundamentals. What that means is all the things that people tend to look at, right? Well, the basics, like the sanshin and the kyonapo. Yeah, but those things are built of things. They're built of footwork, timing, angling, distance, kamae, right? Body position. These things are kihon no kihon, okay? And then even within stepping, right? Footwork, right? There's the kihon no kihon of how the foot is moved, how the weight is transitioned across the foot, which part of the foot, okay? And James, I know you've seen this. I've seen people, as a matter of fact, just recently here, it was probably before the fire, but somebody had done a really, really good write-up on one of these fundamentals and how they've been training for years, and it finally not dawned on them, but it finally clicked how deep of a subject it was. And somebody, in the comments, right? Now this stuff is easy, right? You're just making it more difficult than it really is, or you're making it more complicated than it really is. Okay, that just makes me smile and nod. Because if it were really that simple, you wouldn't have Japanese daishihan, commenting, like when Manaka Daishihan left the Bujinkan to form his Jininkan, right? And I don't even think it was exactly then. It was right after he retired from the Japanese military, because he would only see people because he was always on duty, being stationed in different places. He was in the States training. He was all over the place, and so when he had leave time, people would schedule seminars, or if he was off for a little bit of time, he might do a class somewhere. And but anyway, he made this comment, and I've heard other Japanese daishihan say similar things, right? That Westerners, right? Most people, right? And this was not my words, right? So you can kill the messenger if you want, but it's going to be a good fight. Most Westerners had lousy basics. So for people thinking that they had everything and it's easy, right? You can see it, it's right there. And for, people saying that you're making it more complicated, it's not. If that's true, then either they are the prodigy, and of course, ego makes all of us think that we're the prodigy, or perhaps things aren't as easy as they appear, right? Which goes back to all these other quotes, right, that I have from Matsumi Sensei and other master teachers and whatnot, right? Nothing in Ninjutsu is ever what it looks like. If he can see what you're doing, then he can beat you. And it's not Ninjutsu. A bunch of these things. And I have a couple more for you as we go through tonight, because it's just, it's part and parcel of everything. Okay. So, but what I do want to open up with is I want to talk about presence over posture. Okay. So I know every once in a while the topic of Kamae comes back up again, but I'm always trying to come at it from a different perspective, because I don't want anybody to think that one class or one KUDEN or one Whiteboard Wednesday or one lesson or whatever supersedes everything else. It doesn't take over. It doesn't replace them. It adds to them. Right? These things are so dynamic. They're supposed to be living things. Okay. And if we misunderstand part of the lesson, then the entire lesson, the entire skill is off. It's not what it's supposed to be, or it's not as powerful as it could be. Those kind of things. Okay. So again, I'm back on Kamae, right? And if you were on for the intro, you've already heard this to some degree, but I have to make sure that I repeat it just so that everybody is kind of on the same sheet of music, right? And that is that most students still think of Kamae as a pose, right? As a stance, something you take up, right? You position yourself before the technique or somewhere in the middle, because people will switch stances, right? They see it as a fighting stance, right? But here's the truth that separates the real practitioners from the, I'm not going to use terms like imitators or wannabes or whatever, because I truly do believe that most people want to get this right. Okay. But there's a lot of folks that, whether they're self-taught or whether they've gone to seminars or they've gone to classes or whatever, have received rank in one way or another. But let's just say that it's not always being taught the right way, right? I've made my share of mistakes early on, had to have them corrected. And not by going to the dojos or the trainings or whatever, where they tell you, oh, you understand. Okay. No, or the ones where you hear no a lot, right? Or you're laughed at, or they slam you into the ground because your stuff isn't what you think it is. Right. So I'm going to lead with this. If you think of Kamae as a position, you've already given up your power. You've already given up the power that you could have, or that's inherent in these things. Okay. The word for stance in Japanese is dachi. Anybody that's ever done Japanese martial arts, right? Nekodachi, these different things, right? Cat stance, horse stance, whatever. Okay. Knows that word. And the kanji used to write that, right? Obviously it's not the same as Kamae, but they're pointing to very, very different things. And I highly recommend, instead of me just like spoon feeding everybody all the time, right? We live in a world where you can go into ChatGPT, or you can go to do Google searches or whatever. Now there's AI all over the place. And so you could double check these things. There are really good, Nelson's Japanese to English dictionary. It's only hardback and really big and really, really thick and all that. But you got to look these things up, right? You can look up the kanji and break these things down. Now, be careful, because the word kamae, right? There's a kana at the end. If you look, and I'll bring it back up here again, because I put it on the slide that I made for this. Okay. So there are the purple kanji over here. Hopefully everybody knows the nin, right? But this secondary one that's just off my shoulder here, where the image of me, right? This is a kana, okay? And so it's a conjugation. What that means is it took something that's a verb, this complicated kanji that's at the top here, right? What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 stroke kanji is the verb, right? This is a verb. Japanese is a verb-based or an action-based language, okay? So when this e is added to the end of it, kamae, right? The top part here, kamae, right? It's short, it's clipped. Kameru, right? The verb, and then this e down here, right? And maybe kameru, right? Sorry, my tongue trips over this one, right? But it's a verb. Once we add the a to it, right? Now we've made it a noun. Now it's a thing, okay? But which part of that is this, right? Ultimately, we're going back to something here. Just like looking at the word samurai, okay? Samurai, right? Samurai, it comes from the verb samurao, right? Samurao, to serve, right? So samurai right? It's conjugated at the end, becomes a person, place, or thing, becomes a noun, right? So it's one who serves, okay? Not the same as a bushi. It's not the same, okay? So you could be a samurai at certain points in Japanese history, and while you were among the warrior class, you might have had a bureaucratic or admin job or whatever in the local government, right? It doesn't mean that you were going out and practicing fighting every day. So anyway, you can look that up, right? Look up the kanji and look up the different meanings behind that to extract this thing, this meaning, right? And it's layered, right? So anyway, we want to, if you're really into this and you're not just doing this as a replacement style for other things that you've done, or as an additional style to add to the things that you've already done. And so it's still, either way, it's still running through the same filter of seeing this art, Ninpo-taijutsu, Kamae, whatever, the same way we've been taught to look at the other things. Made that mistake for too many years, right? And I don't know if it finally got beaten into me or it just clicked one day or whatever, right? And no matter how much my teacher, I read really good teachers in the beginning that were teaching this correctly, but years of other martial arts training, okay, Kamae, posture, body, mind, spirit, attitude, yeah, okay. No, I was still relating to them as if they were stances, okay, a launching point for strikes, kicks, techniques, or whatever. Okay, it's not that they're not. It's not that they don't have that aspect. Okay, but remember, just like there are three aspects to a ninja, right? Mio shinobu, right? The body capable of enduring, right? Kokoro shinobu, the mind capable of enduring, and shikyo shinobu, right? The heart, the spirit, the perspective, right? That was the enduring spirit kind of thing, right? Everything, all of our lessons, all of our techniques, all of our kata, right? Especially kamae, right? So there is a physical, me, body, right? Me, same kanji as tai, right? The body of the kamae, right? The form, right? But there's also the kamae of the mind, kamae of the spirit or perception, kamae of the heart, okay? So, again, Hatsumi said more often than not, right? Kamae is a living thing. So as long as we're doing them as stances, as style-based, I don't know what, validators, right? If I take up this, right, then I'm doing Ninpo-taijutsu. If I take up this, then I'm doing something else. For those of you on audio only, I was doing other postures. Okay. So the point here is that Kamae isn't just a posture. Okay? Kamae has a presence. It is a presence. Right. And if we think about this almost backwards, okay, because when we tend to look at things, we tend to look at the outer structure, right? And then we have to think about what goes beyond that. Like I'm looking out of the main window in my office here across the street at the neighbor's house. And so, I can get caught up in what the neighbor's house looks like, except I'm looking at the shell. I'm looking at the outside, counting windows, and it's white and it, has a certain shape and these alcoves and things like that. Right. But I can't see, I've been in my neighbor's house, so I know how it's laid out, but I can't see that from here. And without that knowledge, then But either way, I'd have to work from the outside in. Okay. Um, but Kamae, right? It's the internal structure that dictates how you handle pressure, how you handle danger, how you handle chaos, right? Inside or outside the dojo. Okay. So again, there's an internal thing to it, right? Because we can fake things, right? Come on, right? I'm not the only one in the world who knows that I can, and will fake certain attitudes or a certain presence to communicate things to somebody else, right? I'm tough, I'm unshakable, I'm worried, I'm whatever, okay? Not just accidentally, okay? So, but we have this thing on the inside that's going on, right? And then based on what we think is going on, based on what we want to accomplish, right? Strategically, based on how we're trying to convey a certain message, right? Because we all know that words account for what is it, 15%, give or take, right? Of human communication with other human beings. Only 15%. Okay. There's another 30% that is like inflection and tone and pacing and those kind of things. And the rest of it is body language that includes facial expressions, micro expressions, other body language cues and whatnot, right? Eye roll, all kinds of things, right? So what is that? That's 30, 45. So 55% of human communications is nonverbal. Okay. This is where Kamae comes in. Okay. We're always in Kamae. Okay. But the trick is to recognize that the thing that's going on the outside is a reflection of what's going on the inside. For most people, it's accidental, right? They're feeling a certain way, they're thinking a certain way, and it comes out. It gets conveyed, right? Body language, gestures, all kinds of things, right? If we're trying to manipulate a situation, we're trying to control a situation, well, see, that's the mind adding some other things to the intent. And then we're going to do our best to have the body convey things, right? So Kamae is the science of being present in the moment, given the strategy, given the intent, right? And with that presence, controlling a situation, right? But we don't have to have all three. Okay. It's kind of difficult in this art to not have all three, because what I was taught as a white belt, and a lot of you guys have been around for a long time, Dave and a bunch of you guys, right? So we start with Shizen. I know most people think we start with Ichimonji no Kamae, but we don't. We start with Shizen, okay? And we end up with Shizen Tai, okay? Natural body. That means regardless of which official Kamae we take up or not, we're always in Kamae. The trick, or not the trick, but the secret is in the growth, in the understanding, in the transmission of the lessons. But even beyond that, in the embodiment of the lessons. Okay. Once you really get it, you can never not be in Kamae. Now this is not a this is not a free pass for people to make up bullshit and then call it Kamae. I mean, I guess you can, right? Because there is bullshit no Kamae, right? There's shit no Kamae, whatever. Okay, we're talking about strategic, sound, solid, those kind of things, right? But the reason that most people see the master teachers and Hatsumi Sensei moving around in Shizen a lot is because they've mastered a lot of the lessons that the Kamae, their stance-like quality, gives us, right? So shielding and all that. So until we master timing, distancing, angling, and control of the narrative, control of the scenario, then we definitely need shields in front of us. We need, there's certain things that we're going to need, right? So anyway, as I said earlier, a ninja takes control before their attacker ever realizes that they've lost it. So again, another one of those white belt lessons that I learned. Okay? That speaks volumes. Okay. And it doesn't mean that we're putting our hands on them. It doesn't mean that when I first heard that, I'm like, wow, what does that mean? It means that you're like, you know who your bad guys are. And so like you do all this like stealthy, clandestine, sneaking around shit to set things up. So you got booby traps and all kinds of stuff. So when he finally steps up, right, he doesn't know like all the helpers that you have and all that. No. Part of it is this presence and being able to use Kamae to affect his thinking, his perceptions, his emotions, his even his intent or his will to fight. Right. So there's an inner aspect, right, which obviously came out the night of the fire. But in any situation, right, if calmness is needed, the best tactic is probably not yelling at everybody to calm the fuck down. That's kind of the opposite, right? And even if people got quiet, it doesn't stop their brains from racing. It doesn't allay concerns about whatever the problem might be, right? So again, mastering Kamae is mastering nonverbal communications. Mastering Kamae is mastering one's own self-control, emotional regulation, mental clarity, those kind of things. Okay. So, but again, if we're talking about control and we're talking about bad guys, okay, lesson one is that the ninja takes control from his opponent long before the attacker, assailant, opponent, whatever, before they even realize they've lost it. By the time they realize they've lost control and they scramble to regain control, whatever they're doing not only doesn't work, but it makes the problem for them worse because they lost control way before that point. So no matter what they do, they can't fix it. Okay. They can't fix it. If he can detect that you're breaking his balance, okay, and taking him down, that's easier to resist because he can feel the beginning of it, right? But if when he punches, you wait a little bit longer and initially pull straight back before your foot hits the ground and your weight shifts to that leg and you drift off, right? He doesn't know that he's overextended until he tries to do the next move. Okay. And then as you're doing your next thing, okay. And if we're breaking more than one line of balance at the same time, and the brain's getting mixed messages, and see, there's an old saying, right? Know thyself, right? People like to throw quotes around the internet all the time, right? Know thyself. Great. But most people don't know how they operate. They don't know how they think. They don't know how their emotions are generated. Nothing. Okay. So by studying these things and by applying them, not only are we fighting someone or controlling them in ways that they can't defend easily, but it's like taking them to a battlefield or a dark alley or whatever with a hood on, and then at the moment that they need to defend against us, we take the hood off. Okay? They don't know where they are. They have no reference points, and right? They're 90% still blind, even with their eyes open. Okay. So this idea of taking control from them, this begins with the right Kamae. Physically, yes, right? But also mentally, emotionally, energetically, right? When the fire hit, right? I wasn't in a stance. Can you imagine, James? Can you imagine? I just take up like a Jumonji or an Ichimonji or whatever. And that's how I was walking around the parking lot. I know it sounds silly, but people tend to gravitate toward these things, and they have their favorites. Well, that's like saying you have your favorite emotion or your favorite strategy. And while a lot of people do, that's also the reason why things work sometimes and not others, because they're trying to reduce things to something that's easily workable, but they don't even know what problem they're preparing for. The reason why we have so many Kamae is because we have so many emotions. It's because we have so many different strategic options, right? Or there's so many different environments or contexts, situations, or whatever that we could be in that we don't know what we're going to need to face. And what we'd like to be able to do is reach into the toolbox and pull out the perfect tool for that situation. Okay. So I wasn't in a stance, but I was in Kamae, right? A Kamae of calm, of control, of myself. I wasn't controlling the situation. There was nothing for me to control. There were, James, how many fire companies there? 4, 5, 6? I don't know. There were a bunch. What's that?
I think there's at least 4.
Yeah, and how many trucks between those 4?
Way more than 4.
Way more than 4, right? And that was in the front parking lot, back parking lot. Oh, they were just everywhere, right? There were firefighters everywhere. And so there was nothing there for me to control, right? I did control perceptions because when I went up to identify myself, I own this, right? Right. What can you tell me? That kind of thing. It looks like it started back there. I just knew this was going to happen because for months we've been smelling toxic fumes. My big concern was that, this was a fire waiting to happen. Did they even have certifications? Did they have hazmat things? Then firefighters or fire chiefs were like, we didn't even know that there was a business like this in there, not ours, theirs. So not only were they concerned about them not taking proper safety precautions, but they were supposed to have stuff on file with the local fire departments. So firefighters were not surprised, as they were that night, going into a blaze where there were containers of highly combustible things, right, which puts them at risk, right? So, but I made sure that, from a calm demeanor, right, not frantic, nothing, just, a couple of well-placed words, from a calm demeanor, planting some seeds so that I was the guy that, some came back to, but also that gave him some place to start in maybe what was not necessarily an unknown, but where they might have gotten different information from those who were a little closer to the cause, if you know what I'm saying. Okay. So, but, calm, control, clarity under pressure, watching all this shit happen, but, right, what's necessary in the moment? Observation, information gathering if possible. Even though I'm not talking to people, I'm still watching activity. And James, like I said, James was there and whatnot. So we kept moving between the front of the building to the back of the building to watch activity in R3 with 3 entry exits. And so how were they being affected? Were anybody going in? For the longest time, the one entrance or one exit, it was exit only, wasn't even touched. And then, what was that, James? Probably the last hour and a half, maybe. That's when they opened that back door, because I think they were trying to clear out smoke and whatnot.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but that's what allowed me to lead, right? Not react. Okay. And that's what we're talking about during this episode. Okay. So let's make a slight shift here, right? And again, we need to get away from even the term posture for right now, because when I say posture, most people still think stance. They still think, way to stand or whatever, which is fine. But the word posture also means, um, uh, it means a presence, right? His, his posture or demeanor, right, in the meeting was one of open listening, right, as opposed to, um, barking orders or whatever. Okay, so again, let's make this shift from Kamae being this stance like thing to Kamae as a strategic signal. Right? When I teach Kamae, if you haven't gone through any of our programs, right, we pack foundations of ninja self-defense. Is the foundation of ninja self-defense mastery? Is the word mastery on there, James? Do you know? Or is it just foundations of ninja self-defense? Either way, go ahead.
I think it's just foundations of ninja self-defense.
Okay. So, but it's our module 1 in our white belt to black belt material. Okay. And I know how beginner like that sounds, but I've had folks that have been around for years that were second degree, third degree, fourth degree, under, however they got their rank. And every once in a while I ask, right, based on the curriculum, based on, whatever, where do you think you are? Okay. What have you learned so far? What's your next step? Those kind of things, just a variety of questions. And, or what's the most important thing you think you learned so far since you started? And all of these folks that were upper level say, I've got this rank, but based on your curriculum, I'm somewhere in mod 3, or I'm somewhere in mod 2, or I'm whatever, right? Because I need for them to understand how to use what they're learning in a way that it was designed for, right? Warriors in the Sengoku Jidai Warring States period, ninja-like, whatever, not as a substitute for everything else they've learned, or filtered through everything else they've learned so that it ends up being bastardized and not really needed to. Okay. So what I teach is, yes, here's this posture, right? What throws a lot of students off because they're not quite prepared for it, even though it's in their workbooks, right? I'll say, let's say we're in mod 2. Okay. Show me Doko no Kamae. Great. They'll show me Doko no Kamae. What does Doko no Kamae, what does that mean? What does that name mean in English? Oh, since that means angry tiger or reclining tiger. Okay, good. How about Seigan no Kamae? Right? They'll go through the same thing. Ichimonji no Kamae. They go through the same thing, right? What's the feeling in Doko no Kamae? Right? What is the strategic intent when we're in Doko no Kamae? Okay. What's the difference? Well, strategic intent is why I'm choosing Doko no Kamae, right? It could have just been an oh shit moment, so it was accidental, but because it's in muscle memory and I need to kind of cover as I'm keeping distance, well, that's all fine. Okay. But what's the message that I'm communicating to him across this void, across this kukan, across this space? Okay. Why is the lead hand where it is? Why is the rear hand where it is? Okay. Why might it be in a different place? Right. Because the standard that we give them is almost like somebody, holding an old style telephone, somebody's just yelling at you and kind of have it next to your head. but we have it slightly turned because the hand is supposed to be formed like you're holding something in your hand that you're threatening to throw at them. Okay. And my hand is moving, like imagine having something in your hand that you're just right waiting for that perfect moment, pop, to hit them with this thing. Okay. So there's a certain quality to that. But it could just be a fist, could just be all balled up, right? So it could be this, I don't want to fight, but if you come in here, I got an or else waiting for you, right? These are different things, okay? But this communicates to me, to them, whatever, okay? That this is more than just a form. It's more than just something to throw a shuto from or a kick from or whatever, right? There is intent, there is strategic thinking and manipulation and control of the situation, right? The bubble between us, right? And there is a communication to him that it's not just the form of my body. Miwo Shinobu, right? The body of the Kamae gets him thinking about certain things, what I might be doing, what I might be capable of, where I might be open, how he might be able to get in on me, right? But there's a mind of the Kamae, right? This strategic thinking, right? Why have I chosen this? Well, he's busy thinking about how he might get at me or what I might be up to or what I might be able to do from there, right? He doesn't know, right? He doesn't know the battle plans, right? And if I shift from Doko to a different one, right? Lots of martial artists do that shit all the time because they're trying to be tricky. If I'm thinking strategically, I guess there's some trickiness in that, but I'm not trying to be tricky. I'm being strategic. The trick is he thinks he's looking at somebody doing some weird ass stance. He's tricking himself because there's rhyme to the reason. Okay. And then there's this projection of intent. Okay. And my body language needs to speak to that. It's one thing to take up a frozen pose, and it's another one to be moving dynamically, right, in a way that says, "Stay back. I don't want to fight, but I will if I have to." Right? You stay back. If you come in here, I got something waiting for you. Right? That's alive, right? Because any other thing, can you imagine, right? Me just sitting here and I will just speak words and I will just teach the lesson. And if I could control my eyes to not blink so much, right? And I would just be static and monotone and convey the lesson. Well, hell, there's no life to that. That's what makes people fall asleep. It makes them get up from a friggin' movie theater and leave or walk away to find a more dynamic conversation or whatever. There's no life to that. Right? And there's more to the fight than blocking, punching, and kicking. Right? Imagine being able to control more things than he even knows about because you haven't even touched him. Well, you haven't touched him with your body yet. Okay. So these three aspects of a ninja, these three aspects of all people, right? In most martial arts, they just say body. What do they say? Body, mind, and spirit. Okay. For a ninja, it's all shinobu, right? So the body capable of enduring, the mind capable of enduring, the spirit, the perceptions, the heart capable of enduring. But right, what if we reverse that? What if we studied our Kamae from the perspective of how does this control his body? How does this control his mind? How does it make him make the decisions that will be his downfall? And how does this affect his emotional state, his spirit, right? His commitment or will to fight? Right? How does this do that? if I can't answer those questions, then there's a whole bunch of power or potential within any given kamae that it's not just that I don't know it, but I can't use it. I can't use what I don't know. I can't use what I don't have. It's kind of like when Hatsumi Sensei tells people to forget the kata, forget the technique. How the hell do you forget something you don't know? And besides that, what he's talking about is dropping the name and the attachment to it having to be a certain way. And the only way to do that is to understand the principles and concepts that give that kata is pointing to as far as controlling the environment, controlling the situation. How does this lead to a given end? What's the strategy and the knowledge that these masters in the past conveyed through this model, through this example? When we can do that, this is why Hatsumi Sensei doesn't ever move around in these kata. He doesn't move around these kamae, right? It's not that he threw them away to throw them away. It's that at a certain point, to go back and do the model that's supposed to be the start of things, it would have majorly affected his ability in the wrong direction. Okay, so let's stay with this, right? So Kamae is a strategic broadcast, right? It sends a signal to the opponent. I misspoke. It sends many signals to the opponent. Okay, mixed messaging, all kinds of stuff, right? So just from a place to start, right? The deeper lesson is it controls the narrative. Okay. It says, this is how I will engage, right? That's what he's picking up. This is how I'm going to fight, right? Or this is what I want you to think I'm doing. Okay. He's going to pick up on, okay, so he's in that position. So I need to attack XYZ, whatever. Right? Think about that. Every time you take up a kamae, your partner immediately begins, and it happens very, very quickly, immediately begins to find your weak points or to decide what they're going to throw. Okay. Which is why I would never take up a profiled kamae like Bobi, Seigan, Doko, Ichimonji, those kind of things, against a Taekwondo or Muay Thai kicker who is going to throw something that's circular, because my kamae is supposed to protect my life-sustaining systems as far as the form, the body of the kamae, right? Mio kamae, right? The body of the kamae is supposed to protect my life-sustaining systems. So in Seigan, right, I've got these things in place. So the core is protected, right? I've got limbs in place here to protect the brain bucket, that kind of stuff, right? Anything the tubes and pipes, right, on the inside of the arms, inside of the legs, that if they get kicked, cut, opened up, whatever, right, I'm going to be Spidey and Spider-Man shooting blood all over the place, right? So they're protecting this way, just like Jumonji, just like Kosei. They cover and create a shield or a bubble to protect the life-sustaining systems. Okay. But if I take up a kamae against somebody who's going to throw round or circular attacks, long range, most Taekwondo people that are really, really good at Taekwondo, not just the forms, I mean, really good at Taekwondo, typically are tall, thin, and they can have an equal torso to leg length or ratio kind of thing. But typically they're shorter on the torso, longer on the legs, because it just works for them, right? They've got this longer reach, right? So by blading myself, profiling this way, and putting my limbs out in this position, right? I expose my spine, kidneys, and other organs, front and back, right, to this person, right? Their little flying sidekicks and whatnot, where they snap a leg out from behind you, right, or from under you. Okay, so probably not the best place, probably not the best choice of kamae, right? So what is it that I'm doing? Okay. Or I might, if you're in the upper levels, then by all means do that. Just knowing that as they shift to do things, right, you're going to shift to a hira ichimonji, either koto style or kukishinden style, or shizen or a jumonji, hira jumonji, something like that, where as they throw it, you're going to take that away, move into a position where either you're wide open and then you can move again, or as you transition, let's say from hira to a jumonji, right? Remember, moving from any kamae to any other kamae naturally creates a strike or a cut. So right, I can move from one to another, disguising the attack. Okay. So a little history lesson here as far as battlefield analogy, right? On the battlefield during the Sengoku Jidai Warring States period, right? Kamae was not just for defense or for readiness. Right? It was an invitation, or it was a deception, or it was a barrier. So these are just different ways of looking at these things, okay? As opposed to this position where we're gonna. I've seen people in Seigan no Kamae bouncing around like they were a boxer or a taekwondo guy or whatever, because that was their background before this one, right? And then their logic is, well, I mean, I had to modify this because you can't be fast in this kamae. No, you can't be fast in that kamae because your hip is not where it's supposed to be over your foot. Your weight distribution is off. Your posture, what they used to say back in the 80s, well, it sucks, right? So you can't be fast in the posture or the position you've put your body in. So what this person is doing is modifying things based on what they think they have to do, but they still want to hold on to the stance. See, if they're doing that, then they have to see it as a dachi. I don't care if they're using the word kamae or not. Okay? And then they're bouncing, trying to throw a side kick and whatnot. They completely missed the point of it. And I don't know if they missed it because they did what the one guy with the comment did, right? Looked at pictures in books or watched videos or whatever and made assumptions based on what they already know or what they've learned in the past in different arts or different contexts, or they learned it from somebody who did that. Because if they learned it from the Japanese teachers, well, it's just not a possibility. I trained with all of them. Okay. So from let's call it a Musha Shugyo or a life perspective, right? In an emotional conflict, right? Kamae is how you hold yourself when you're under verbal, social, or mental attack, right? What's your strategy? What's your intent? Where's your heart? Right? And what are you giving away? Right? The first thing we can do is watch for that in other people. Okay? Because people who are disconnected tend to kind of lean back and lean away. They might check their phone, looking around. They'll come back to the conversation, kind of nod like they're really getting it, but they've already checked out. Okay? The kamae of somebody who's actively engaged, right? So they're shifting, they're kind of leaning in, or they're, right? This is the universal sign of thinking, right? Remember the statue, the thinker? Okay. I know he's in some big pose and this kind of thing, but touching around the mouth or the chin or the face, right? With the eyes looking typically up and to one side or the other, doesn't matter. It's different for different people. It's the sign of thinking, right? If you say something and they're looking side toward their ears, right? They're relating, their thinking is more related to what they've heard, either in the present or in the past, unless there's some chatter over here and they might be looking in that direction, but their head will move. Okay? But when they're thinking, right, accessing visual memory or creative memory, because maybe they're trying to generate a response, or they're trying to process it so they can come up with a good question, that kind of thing. When we look kind of toward our ears, we're kind of listening, but people tend to cant their head as well, almost like they're still listening. And if you were that person and you were body aware, you would feel the erectile tissue in your ears start to tense up, because it's firming up to be like a radar dish that's receiving signals, right? The ear is shaped the way it's shaped to funnel sound waves into that hole and into the mechanism, right? So I know, weird hobbies. What can I tell you, right? So Kamae is not just how you position your limbs, right? It's how you control the narrative. It's how you control the opponent's perception, and even their willingness to engage. Okay, so again, you know, go back to the thing that I was taught very, very early on, right? And it's never left me. Right? A ninja takes the attacker's control long before the attacker ever realizes he lost it. But that begets the question: how? How does a Kamae do that? Okay, it's not a tactic. Okay? You might call it a philosophy, but that's a mindset, right? It's a strategic. It comes from strategic thinking and strategic application of body language, body positioning, to get this guy to think certain things, to feel certain things, right? And to act on those decisions, right? So, in the right Kamae, right? That's how that happens. Because most human beings are sight oriented. So, it's going to look at form. But your Kamae should funnel his eyes, just like our ears are shaped to funnel sound waves in. Your Kamae funnels his thinking in certain directions. So how does Kosei no Kamae do that? How does Hoko no Kamae do that? How does Doko no Kamae do that? How does Hachimonzo no Kamae do that? Okay. When it's done right, it's not just what your body does. It's what your presence takes away from the other person. Their balance, their plan, their confidence. If anybody on here, I'm assuming a lot of you are, right, are parents, right? You know what your presence does. Kids are acting up, doing whatever they're doing, and you walk into the room. Or you say, "What are you doing?" Right? So vocal tone, or when you walk in, right? And then, like, if you've ever done it where you're like, I'm teaching my grandson to be a little bit more flexible in his mind. And so for, I don't know, since he was probably about 3, I started playing around with like word games and just kind of mental gymnastics, right? I'll say, or he'll say something like, "I'm really smart," and I'll go, "No, I don't think so." Well, in the beginning, right, he would look at me like, "Why would you say that?" Okay, and then I would have to explain. Okay, so are you smart? Okay, because there were multi-layered lessons, right? Are you smart? Yeah. Do you know that? Yes. How do you know that? Well, because I know my alphabet and I know I know these things. And right. Yeah, you're very, very smart. Okay. So sometimes people might say that to hurt your feelings. But do you think grandpa said that to hurt your feelings? I don't know. Did you? No. There's a type of joking where somebody will say and say, I'm explaining this thing out to him, right? Oh, so he's now using the humor in my direction, in other people's direction, right? He's 5, right? So he gets it, but I'm also teaching him to read into things, that not to take something at face value first off, right? Because I'm really good at the inflection, I'm really good at the tone, I'm really good at the being that person who would mean it, but he has to kind of sort it out. Who am I dealing with? That kind of thing, right? So this is a control mechanism. Okay, not just I'm taking this posture up, and then I'm going to like bob and weave, or I'm going to do these little things because I want to set up the perfect punch or the perfect strike. Not that I don't, or I want to confuse you. Not that I don't, but this is only part of the confusion. Okay, the confusion should begin long before, right? When he determines or makes the assumption that he knows how he's going to approach you, and then you either take that away from him, or he doesn't understand, like uke nagash from the context that we do, or the fact that he can't attack me without surrendering a piece of his body. Right? He sees it as a weapon. I see it as a target. He can't punch me, kick me, or grab me without surrendering one or more parts of his body to me. And I don't mean his head and the rest of his body that everybody else likes to go after. Nobody goes after arms and legs because, well, you can't hurt them in gloves. Okay? And I know we can kick legs and kick arms once somebody's down and things like that, but I don't know. Okay. So again, right, when it's done right, it's not just what your body does. It's what your presence takes away from that person. Okay. And this is where students go wrong. This is where people go wrong. This is where I'm trying to help you not make the same mistakes I made way back, the same mistakes that a lot of people are making. Okay. Because I don't know if anybody's been keeping count, not that you can, but there was a time when I could name all 3 American instructors in the United States and tell you where they were, right? Atlanta, Georgia, Dayton, Ohio, just outside of Dayton, Ohio, a little burg called Germantown, right? And in California, right? Then he moved to Red Lake, New Jersey. Then I, came a point where I couldn't tell you how many Bujinkan people were up and down the East Coast of the United States, right? So how many people out there have rank? So what if you come up against somebody who's learned some stuff, right? And they know what they're looking at, and they know, right? But their level of thinking is this lower level of thinking. Not that they can't take you apart, not that they're not a good fighter, not that they're not powerful, not that they're not dangerous. But how do you have an advantage against somebody who knows your stuff? Right? You have to know it deeper. You have to know it better. Okay? And this is where most students go wrong. Okay? They treat Kamae like a transitional pose, just like a way station between techniques or a launching point or whatever. Okay? But Kamae isn't the step before the technique. Kamae is what makes the technique possible on multiple levels. Okay? These are some of the simplest things and the easiest for people to imitate, right? Mimic, but some of the hardest things for people to get their head wrapped around as far as what they really are. Okay? So before I move into the next section here, James, if I haven't put you to sleep, what kind of questions or comments have come up about these things? And I don't want to hear about sidebar conversations or things like that.
A little bit earlier, Kevin Hartwell said hello from Washington State.
Hey, Kevin.
And Trinity said, your presentation of Kamae reminds me of the podcast planning convo you and I had about the Alter Ego book. Kamae could be a starting point for pinpointing ideals to emulate and integrate into certain fronting facets of ourselves that are necessary for our different aspects of our lives.
That's my girl. Yes. Yes. Actually, we all, I mean, if everybody could get their head wrapped around the fact that you're always in Kamae and your Kamae shifts and changes in every conversation, in every situation, or just even pre-engagement or post-engagement, right? You ever been in front of somebody and they're talking a bunch of BS or whatever, right? And you're just like smiling. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Right? Yeah. Okay. That's a Kamae. Okay. And then you walk away from them and go, oh, that's a Kamae too, right? That's your body telling on you, right? Expressing what's going on the inside. But how would that be different than picking one that hides your intent? Because this is hiding your interest and your intent, right? And the better you can do it, the more they believe it. Because if you go, oh yeah, yeah, well, yeah. So for those of you on audio only, right? I just made this uber animated face that was still, it sounded like I was agreeing, but everybody that's looking at it can go, okay. So that's where the person's going to get pissed off, or they're going to, you're not listening, you don't care, whatever. Well, that's true. Okay. Absolutely right. I don't. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for playing. But if we don't want to push buttons in that direction, oh yeah, no, it's all good. Okay. So to study Kamae is to study human body language. Okay. If you can understand it, there's almost no one that you can't read. If you understand it, this becomes a very powerful way to control and manipulate conversations, situations, interactions, okay? Relationships. Okay? A self-defense situation, a fight, is a relationship. James, how many times have you heard me say that over the years? Right? It's a relationship, albeit a negative one, but it's still a relationship, right? So if we're to bring these things alive or to life, one question that could be asked is, who are you being when you're in a given Kamae? Okay? Because there's two sides to it, right? There's always the dragon realm and the tiger realm, but which side are you on? The tiger realm is very raw and it's very emotive. So in that case, your Kamae is very authentic because it's being led by whatever the emotion is. And that doesn't have to be like when I say tiger, like roar. There is this long name, right? We shortened it in the Kamae or in the dojo for when we end up like on hands and knees on the ground. We could be at a picnic, we whatever, down like playing with my grandson when he was, in his little baby pool, whatever. And so I'm down, or I'm picking up something that I dropped, and something happens, right? So Kohen, we just truncated this whole big long name. If you have Togakureru Ninpo, it's in there. Okay. Big long name. Okay. We just truncated it to Kohen, tiger change. Right. Kohen no Kamae, tiger change posture. Okay. But the full name is pregnant tiger protecting her young posture. So there's this position where, but a demeanor where she could rip your throat out, but she would be leaving her kids unprotected, or she's pregnant, right? And so doesn't want to get in a skirmish and risk the unborn children. So she makes very specific, very specific decisions, right? So she still may growl, she still may, dart or lunge, she may, be in a position where she's like that cat that's kind of pulled back and whatnot. So she's not risking the young unless she has absolutely no choice, right? So there's these names convey like a real sense of what's going on. Trinity actually brought up a book she and I were talking about that we were discussing. It's called The Alter Ego Effect. I highly recommend it. Okay, all celebrities use it. Really, really good politicians and whatnot, spies use it, whether they know it or not. But it's a really good book, and it points to the inner workings, right? And it, for those of you studying Mikyo, it helps to also highlight, right, the dynamic nature of self, right? People always say, well, that's not me or whatever. Okay, well, you're a crystallization of all your choices and decisions and whatnot, and your belief about your own limitations. Okay, when you say things like that, right? A ninja is supposed to be, while a ninja has a sense of self, there is somebody there. There's this true self, right? But the ability to bring certain aspects of ourselves forward, to lead with those in a given situation, to one, operate the most appropriately for that situation, two, to present the perfect image that the other person needs to see, expects to see, whatever, so that you can gain that relationship, that trust, that connection, or whatever, to be able to work together or whatever you're doing, right? So but it's not, you're not being you, right? You're just bringing a certain aspect forward. Okay. So, if I need to be in dad mode, there's a certain me that I'm being, not pretending to be dad, but there's certain qualities and traits that lead because I'm in dad mode. If I'm in friend mode, certain qualities lead, right? If I were telling jokes in both realms, they're going to be very, very different. Now, my children are out in the world and they would wish that they didn't become an adult and be more friend-like with dad, because they don't they're not sure they like some of the humor that I share with friends, but there's still a cap that I won't use with my children. There's still a line. I know Trinity doesn't believe me at the moment, but there's still a line, right? So when I'm a martial arts teacher, when I'm Ming Sensei or Dai Shihan, there's a certain, but this is not like an actor. I mean, it's not like it either, but I'm not choosing, okay, I need to be, dun, 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 right? And then, oh, wait, let me say that line again. But no, it's just, we all do it, right? This is just something that can be explored much, much more deeply, because when we're in Jumonji, if we're in what we consider to be a mod 1, more aggressive Jumonji, right? We're leading with a certain aspect, right? If we don't feel, and our heart and head is not in that thing, and we're doing it as a bluff, we better hope they don't call us on our bluff. But see, that's why they would call us on our bluff, right? Because there's something that's off, right? That's like one of the jokes that I have with people that I first meet, or my wife introduces, or who knows how things got led around or whatever. And the topic comes up, that I'm this rank in martial arts or whatever. And I go, just the old fat bald guy. Don't worry about me. Right. Or I'm harmless or something like that. And people will go, why is that difficult to believe? I don't know. I don't understand why people don't believe me. I mean, I do, but I'm also not setting those people up for failure. So, but to study Kamae is to study body language. It's also to study wholeness. Okay. Because once you study Kamae, you will know when somebody's posture, physical posture, doesn't match the words, and or the inflection is all those kind of things, right? This stuff goes very, very deep. Right. I also think this is why a lot of people just decide they're going to just stick with Budo Taijutsu, because it's just easier. Not that it's easy. Right? It's easier because you're just staying within the martial arts fight realm. Okay. But what are you conveying? Because it doesn't matter if I'm holding a spear, I'm holding a sword, I'm unarmed, holding a hanbo, whatever. Okay. What I'm projecting and what I'm conveying in Seigan no Kamae, Seigan is Seigan is Seigan. Okay. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing Kotoryu Seigan no Kamae, right? Generic Ichimonji, that kind of thing. Or I'm doing Kukishinden Seigan no Kamae, which to most people, if they just saw a photograph, just looks like you're standing in Shizen, but you're looking to the side. Okay. You could be looking straight forward as well, but typically we're just kind of looking to the side, right? The presence and what's being conveyed from that posture is the same, right? I'm watching you. Okay. So, and there's also a shield, right? Whether my arms are up or not, it's the same. Okay. So there's a question to ask, right? If I look at 3 Kamae that look similar, right? Ichimonji no Kamae, Seigan no Kamae, and let's see. When I say Ichimonji, I mean the generic one that most people think of, right? Straight arm, that kind of thing, right? Not the Gyoko version. Seigan, Kotoryu, right? And Kukishinden Seigan no Kamae, that the arms aren't up at all. The feet aren't way far apart. We're not sinking low, right? But the feeling and presence is all the same. They're all the same. What is that? What makes Seigan Seigan? Tate no Kamae, one of the forms of Tate no Kamae with a hanbo, where you're bladed and you're holding it like a cane, and it's down in front of you. So it's kind of in shielding position, but it's kind of short, right? In front of you, okay? That's the Seigan no Kamae for the hanbo. Okay. What is that? Because in all 3 of those realms, in all 3 of those presentations, and all 3 of those manifestations, physical manifestations, they're all the same. It's very, 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 very difficult to get in on the Seigan no Kamae if you understand Seigan no Kamae. Whether it's called Seigan or not, doesn't matter. Okay? Could be called Bobi no Kamae, could be whatever. Okay. Any other questions or comments, James, before I move into this next part?
Just Trinity said, I miss the Finding Nemo humor. But that was it.
Humor transitioned, changed. Yeah, she missed the Finding Nemo humor. She's making a reference to anybody that understands Pixar movies. Like, I have adult friends who won't watch those kind of movies because it's a kid thing and it's beneath them and whatnot. But they are amazing people. There's a whole story behind that the guy that founded Pixar with 2 other people was actually fired from Disney, but he's the one that like came up with all these Disney blockbusters. And when it came time for him to say, look, you're making all this money and I'm getting salary. Yeah, I think I want royalties. The CEO who brought him up through all these things because he was like the idea guy, fired him. And so he went, hold my beer. and formed Pixar, and then that became Disney's biggest. Anyway, so Pixar is amazing at creating moments in these movies where kids and adults alike are laughing at the exact same time, but for completely different reasons, right? So the one reference that Trin might be pointing to at the moment is in Finding Nemo. They're in the dentist's fish tank, right? And they're taking him. They're taking Nemo. Well, the other fish are taking Nemo for this bringing him into the clan, so to speak, right? And so they take him to the base of Mount Wanahakalugi, right? And so to kids, it's just this funny sounding word. To adults, it's Wanahakalugi, right? So I've watched all my kids make that leap. That like the previous watching, they're like, Wanahakalugi, and then I get it, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think what she's pining for is the innocence. Maybe. Anyway, so we'll have more. There's more fun to come. Anyway, so it's all good. Is that it? Is that all we have?
Yes, that's it right now.
Okay, cool. All right. So again, just very, very quickly here, I made mention of this transitional pose error, right? So we really need to deconstruct the misuse, right? We really need to kind of back that up, right? So one of the big mistakes that I made, that a lot of my peers made, and that the master teachers had to get us past, was this misuse of the kamae as something to pass through on the way to the real technique. What I mean by that is, if we're not careful, if we've already passed the point of we weren't careful, then what ends up happening is, just like in probably every other martial art that has stances, we see these things as necessary evils or momentary cool things that we have to learn to get to the cool shit. But the reality is that the kamae are the cool shit. Okay. If Takama Sensei taught that all you needed was Kyonopo, and Kyonopo is nothing more than transitioning from kamae to kamae to kamae using proper footwork to manage timing, distancing, and angling, right? That there's nothing beyond that. Not that there isn't anything beyond that, but as far as the physical stuff goes, right, then there's got to be way more. Okay. So again, here's one of those things that I say all the time. While people are dismissing the kamae, like they learn it long enough to memorize how to take up the position, and then they assume they know it, right? Because they're trying to get to the cool shit. But if you really understood kamae, you'd understand that kamae really is the cool shit. Right? Kamae is the technique. It is psychological manipulation. It's emotional manipulation. It's context control. It's narrative control, right? It's the context in which the technique becomes possible. I had a student, long distance student, I still have them, right? Long distance student who asked me at one point how the lineages come up with the different kamae, right? Because the assumption for a lot of people is they created the kamae and then the techniques were built off the kamae. But that's not true. That's backwards. I know. I validated this in Japan. Right? Because they asked the question, and then for several coaching calls that we had, I went through different kamae and, you know, the strategic thinking, the thing that you're communicating with your body language, all these kind of things. And then I went to Japan, and I always do this. I make little, student asks me a question, I write the question down. Okay. I provide answers based on what I know and whatnot. And then I go to Japan and I ask the question there to different teachers. Okay. Because the way I look at it is, if I'm wrong, well, that'll get fixed quickly. If I'm right, well, then that validates my understanding. But I can be right and they throw more stuff on top of it. So it's a freaking win-win-win situation. Okay. But I asked this question and the teacher just stopped, canned his head. And he said, "You've used this stuff, yes? Like, not in a dojo, you've used this stuff." Yeah. Right. And I know that you know the lineages. So you already know. Okay. If you understand the lineages and you understand their primary principles and concepts, then you already know that the Kamae were developed after the principles and concepts, because the Kamae allow you to do the technique easier. Kamae could be considered a tactic. I know I use the word technique here, but tactics are things that you do to make the execution of your technique much easier. Okay. So if I want to elicit a straight line attack, then I'm going to place my limbs in a position like Gyoko Ryuichi Monji no Kamae or Jumonji no Kamae or whatever, where that's an easy shot. If I want to eliminate straight line attacks or minimize them and force him to have to go around or move the barrier or whatever, then I'm going to take up a Kamae that, right? It's kind of like a magician forcing a card. If you don't know what a force is, the magician like may spread out the cards, may put them on the table or whatever, but the way they go about, either through dialogue or manipulation or whatever, the way they go about getting a person to choose a card of their choosing while making the other person believe that they actually had free choice. And if the person doesn't choose that card, right? You already know the setup. So, right, if I'm trying to force the 7 of clubs, and the 7 of clubs is sandwiched between the 3 of diamonds and the 5 of hearts, we'll say, right? And they choose either side of that or anywhere else, then I just cut the deck and have them put their card back down wherever it is, and then I've cut the card or cut the deck at either the what I say 3 of diamonds, 5 of hearts, something like that, right? Either one of them, right, are going to be on top of their chosen card. And then I do a false shuffle so that wherever the hell in the deck that we'll say the 5 of hearts is, right, then the other one is either on top of it or under it, depending on how I manipulated it. Okay. So even when you did have free choice, you didn't have free choice. Hatsumi Sensei had us think about and explore the way magicians do things to understand, right? Kamae are not, they're not just fight stances. Kamae are physical manifestations of Kyujutsu Tenkan, right? Disguising truth and falsehood. Making someone believe that they know what you're doing and how to deal with it when they couldn't be farther from the truth. Okay. And again, real world kind of thing here, non-fighting, just like the fire. Okay. The mental Kamae of leadership determined the technique that I used. Okay. There's other things other than leadership. I'm just kind of keeping this short, right? It's not the other way around. Okay. I didn't drive to the fire, right? Deciding on technique or whatever. Okay. What do I do? Right. James knows, right? We didn't get into a little triangle here, right? What should we do? Okay. right? I kept reiterating, right? Even when my wife came up, right? And so, what's going on, or some people were posting a couple of things and, what about this? What about, don't know. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I won't know until I walk in and determine what I have to work with. Until then, right? All I have are skill sets, and no, it's not that I didn't think, okay, look, if everything's like wet and lost, then what is there to do, right? Save what I can, not the other stuff. Certainly not going to throw myself on the ground and be like a 3-year-old kicking the ground and screaming, no, whatever. Right? So anyway, let's just keep moving. Okay. Let's just for a couple of minutes here talk about 3 invisible, I'm going to call them powers of Kamae or within Kamae, right? That I think are worth more than just light study. Okay. And this is something you're probably not going to be able to like Google, right? Because these are strategic principles. All right. Now, what you can do is Google strategic principles of the different lineages, and then make sure that you're not acting out cognitive dissonance, right? Between the lineage principles and the Kamae. If the lineage's combat principles are XYZ, then the fucking strategic principles of the Kamae from within that lineage are either XYZ, or they're X, or they're Y, or they're Z, or they're XY, or they're YZ. You get the idea? Okay. It's not, these are not interesting little data points that we're going to regurgitate back to people so that we can sound like we know what we're talking about. Okay. These are things that we know, kokoro shinobu, right? Mind. Okay. That we integrate, and we're watching for, we're examining perspective, right? The scenario and the context to make sure that this is a good fit. And then body, right? We can take it up, not only take it up, but we can move around well, right? We can use Kamae like the tool, like the weapon that they are. We don't use Kamae to wield weapons. Kamae are a weapon. The weapon we think of, Hanbo, sword, knife, whatever, is an extension of the primary weapon. Okay. The shell that comes out of a tank's gun, right, isn't the weapon. It's the thing that does the damage at the distance, but the weapon is the tank. So, okay, Shuto. Yeah, okay, Shuto's landing. Okay. Which Kamae is it coming from? But more to the point is, which Kamae is best to protect ourselves against his fight style so that we can enter undeterred to land the Shuto that knocks his ass out. Okay. So three things here, 3 invisible powers, right? 1, perceptual control. Okay. This is how your Kamae alters the opponent's timing and decision making. Okay. We need to stop thinking about, I'm taking up this Kamae and I'm going to do XYZ. Okay. Of course you are. And you're going to have an easier time doing that if you can control how they are able to do things. Okay. So not just how they can get at you with what kick or punch or grab or whatever, but their timing. Okay. Almost all Kamae, not all, but almost all Kamae have some way of disguising the length of the weapon. So he can't determine proper distance. If he knows the length of your weapon, then he knows how close he can get, and he knows from where to attack from. Right? Same thing with decision making, all that. Okay. But again, not just fighting. Okay. This is in business negotiations. This is in arguments. This is in emotional attacks. Okay. If they don't know how to get at you, then they end up either just throwing a bunch of shit around, or they expose their intentions before they even open their mouth. Okay. It's this is really cool shit. This is Kamae, right? And unfortunately for most students, Kamae gets left behind in the dojo. When they walk out into the world, they're not applying ninjutsu. They're not applying Kamae. They're not operating from a position of safety, observation, and influence. Okay, and they're often not adaptable. What I mean by that is they believe that they are fill in the blank. This is me. This is what's natural for me. What they really mean is habitual, but they're using the word natural, right? And so they can't adapt well. Okay. All right. So that's number one. Number two, they're a base for, again, energetic, or what we might call spiritual broadcasting. Okay. So it's like a Wi-Fi signal. Okay. It radiates or projects your intent and your emotional state. Your body language tells on you, right? People that are really, really, really good at masking those things, very flat demeanor. Anybody meet Sensei Alexander? Okay. Not that he has a flat demeanor. He has an awesome sense of humor and all that. He's just in, neutral space most often. He still gets angry, still gets frustrated, still tells awesome jokes, that kind of stuff. But just has a very neutral place to start from. Shoshi Whistler. James, right? Shoshi Whistler, very much the same, right? Smile, right? If that breaks, people kind of look at him like, uh-oh, right? Because, yeah. So everybody always says that he's more scary in the dojo than I am. Okay? And it's not because they're not, not worried that about the techniques or whatever. He's just very calm and, and so when that shifts a little too much, even if he smiles more broadly or just like smiles and nods and pats him on the shoulder, there's that feeling of, oh, that means something and it's not attaboy kind of thing, right? So by training in that tiger realm with the Kamae, right, where things are very, very emotive, right? And watching people. We used to be taught, go to where people hang out, go to fairs, go to the mall, whatever, people zoos, right? And watch people interact, watch, interactions of things, so that you can, instead of seeing people already angry, watch the anger manifest physically, right? The tone of the voice change and things like that. Same thing with happy, same things with, joke telling and screwing around, that kind of thing, right? Because Scotty didn't just beam him down in anger mode, right? There's this thing, right? So it projects, right? And the other thing too, with later on, right? Saki, okay? Sensing the force of the killer, okay? Beyond that is Kuji and Juji, right? Just sensing. Okay. But beyond the Saki and the Kuji is being able to mask your intent. If you don't know how you project it, how do you mask it? Because I promise you, and this is a big part of Shinden Furoryu, right? When you're supposed to be neutral. I had a hell of a time with this. Most people, they don't know themselves and they don't know what's neutral for them when they're neutral. So what ends up happening is they try to let go of a bunch of stuff and just go blank. And anybody who knows them or who's been watching them will see the change. Right? And that change signals you did something. You're doing something. Right? You didn't go to your neutral. You went to geared down, and so you're not yourself, right? So it's very, very different. Okay. So to be able to mask intent, you have to know you. So we're not making this more complicated than it needs to be, right? Based on the guy's comment about, this is easy, it's not as complicated or whatever, right? But this does require more work than just learning how to pose the body and try to fight from there. Okay. And again, we're always sending mixed messages to the brain, right? Because it's looking at our body, but it should also be looking at what's coming at it from the eyes, or what sense it's picking up, right? What it feels like I'm about to do. Okay. There was try this. Here's a really cool exercise I was introduced to a long time ago. You have to have a training partner that will like punch you in the face really hard. Okay. But what you're going to do is you're going to put them in a fight pose. Could be Jumonji, could be just a street kind of thing or whatever. And you're going to stand in Shizen. And the message to them is when you're ready, right? So if you see me move, right, the feeling you should have is like a Daijodan or whatever, where like if I have that moment, I'm going to nail you. Okay. And so they're going to wait for you to move, right? But as soon as they do, they're going to go fast and hard. They're going to be hot, bow, right? So just be prepared to get hit. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're just going to rest. And what you want, this is really difficult because you have to have somebody that's fully committed to the energy of things and not just doing some damn, we're just going to, go through the motions kind of thing. They've got to be that guy who is waiting for your freaking nose to flare. Anything that signals you're about to go. He doesn't have to wait for a shoulder to move or whatever. He just needs, like, he detects any kind of movement, bang, he can go, right? And so I'm going to be neutral. And then what I want to be doing is sensing him. Okay. And when I think my partner's there, that if I twitch, I'm getting nailed, right? I'm going to back up into Seigan. Okay. And if you're connected, your partner should end up going with his punch, but feeling like he wanted to go, but feeling like he wasn't quite ready to go. Okay. So can you make him punch? Right? He has that feeling of beating you to the punch, but you're actually going to use a defensive movement that we would normally use to evade a punch to pull one out. Is the coolest thing, right? Anyway, so, but on life, dojo, life, or battlefield or whatever, right? This is why appearing calm, appearing composed, unmovable, right? Fudoshin, right? Even when you're burning inside, right? It disrupts aggression. In the scrolls, it says to always meet the opponent with a smile on your face. Not a big ass cheesy animated kind of thing, but just this, at a base level, nothing disrupts somebody, nothing confuses somebody who wants to harm you more than you smiling. And I understand that could make him want to punch me even more, but I'm not talking about this kind of smile, right? For those of you audio only, right? Big old cheeky smile. No. Just this knowing that you're upset. I understand, right? But the attack is on you. Okay? And if you can do it even when you're burning inside, okay? Again, this is emotional regulation too. Okay? Because if somebody can irritate the shit out of you and distract you, then they own you. They own your mind and they own your heart. Okay? You gave it to them. Okay? Because all you can think about is them, which means you can't think about other options. Okay. But it doesn't just disrupt aggression in them, it disrupts aggression in me. Okay. Because when we say aggression, I was taught this as a white belt. When we use the term aggression, we do not always mean it in a negative sense of destruction. It means energetic. It means focused use and projection of the energy. Okay. So we want to cut that aggression, that sting of aggression that makes us not clear. Right. We want to be calm, composed, unmovable. Okay. You ever see somebody out in a parking lot, yelling and screaming at somebody. I just saw it again a couple of days ago, right? This couple got out of the car and obviously she's pissed off, right? And she's just yelling and screaming and she's calling him names and stuff. And she's kind of doing these little side glances to see if other people are listening, right? It was plainly obvious that she was doing what she was doing so that other people would see how bad of a person he is. What she was missing was the looks on these people who were clearly thinking, isn't there a better place for you to have an argument with this guy than in a parking lot? Right? So, but this person is yelling and screaming. If you're yelling and screaming back, well, then you're throwing gasoline on the fire. Okay? You have a fight. You have an argument. You have this disruption. But if you have one person yelling and screaming and pissing vinegar and all that kind of stuff, right? And you're staying calm, composed, and unmovable, you don't have a fight. People don't perceive a fight. What they perceive is a fucking lunatic yelling and screaming and whatever and attacking somebody. Right? So now we're controlling more than just the dynamic between me and the other person, because they may be so hot that I can't control that, but I can control the context around me and other perceptions. And I'm more likely to get people to come to my aid by doing it this way than by just being another animal roaring in the jungle. Okay. And then the third one here is psychological anchoring. Okay. And so this is going to sound a little bit woo-woo, and I don't mean it to be. It's just what it is. Okay. Your Kamae becomes your mind form. Okay. Your way of holding space, not just your body. Okay. If you look at through any of Hatsumi Sensei's books where I think they're in the spear book, the bow book, that kind of thing, he had some photographer take a whole bunch of pictures and stuff. And if you were looking at Kamae itself, right? We have these static images in our head saying no Kamae and Chudan no Kamae and Heito no Kamae, whatever, right? But he has these pictures in there and there's a little bit of a blur and whatnot. He gives them these names, right? And that's really worth exploring, right? Because now we're really leaning into the three bodies, right? Because with this physical body, we've got this mental body, right? Just think about it as like awareness, okay? Whatever you're aware of within your environment, that's how far you extend out because you have control over that, right? You can perceive things from it and you can control things within it, okay? And then you've got an emotional body or a spiritual body, okay? And we'll just keep this simple, okay? My daughter, right, Trinity, lives an hour and 20 minutes from me. There's still a connection. James is, what are you, James, like 4.5, 5 miles from me right now? Okay. Same thing, right? I've got a friend in Toronto, right? Ontario. Canada. I have one in, you get the idea, right? There's still a connection. And I still have, there's still this thing, right? But how do you hold your space? Okay. Most people, when they take up a Kamae, they're focused on the Kamae and the trickery and what they're doing with this to get them to do that, right? Except my Kamae influences this bubble here, the surround around me, right? Because I can only see so far, right? So I need to move a certain way, or I can shift sides to take. So there's more to this, okay? And again, I don't know that I would say that I stood strong after the fire. We went in, we looked around, I was surprised that things were intact way more than I thought they might be, right? But the demeanor wasn't accidental. It wasn't forced, but it wasn't accidental, right? It was a trained response via Kamae the Spirit. Okay? And most of you didn't know me before the training. I wasn't this guy, right? I was conditioned to freak out in situations like that. I mean, that would have been way over the edge. Okay? When I say trained response, I mean training through situations, chaotic and, arguments and things like that, until I don't have to fake it. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to just, and this is actually in our student workbook. So anybody that ever got the done for you curriculum blueprint, I think, is that what the package is called, James? It's the workbooks.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a page in each one of the workbooks, right? They're templated. So they say that they're laid out the same way. They're just key elements that are shifted, right, as we go through the elements. And so there's an outline page for that particular module, and there's an outline page for that particular element, okay, that particular strategic mode of operation, okay? But there's a little line in there, and this is not verbatim, but there's a little line in there that points to the ability to be able to change emotional states, to be able to change modes like flipping a light switch. This is not serving me. I need to be this. And within a couple of breaths, you can switch. Takamatsu Sensei used to describe this ability, like regaining the endurance, or the nin kind of thing, or whatever state you need to be in, this calm, this furoshin kind of thing, in the amount of time it takes for a puff of smoke to dissipate. Okay. And I think we covered this in the past, didn't we, James? Right.
Yes.
Think about somebody taking a puff off of a pipe or cigarette, cigar, whatever, right? And then just kind of exhaling it, right? How long does that take? Okay. Here's the secret. The harder you blow, the more force you put into it, the faster it dissipates. The more chaotic or strong the winds are, the faster it dissipates. So the Uda, the hidden lesson of Takamatsu Sensei's lesson, is you must be able to reset or to gain composure or focus or get into Kamae or whatever it is, faster, the greater the amount of pressure. Right? No more. I can't even start thinking until I have my third monster drink or my 15th cup of coffee. Right? You're frustrating me. I can't even think about this until I take some time off. There's shit that goes on in the world that you don't have time to take time off. So let's do one more set of questions, and then I have an exercise Of course, it's always voluntary. You can do it or not do it, right? For the week, but we'll see how it goes. So, let's see. Do I have anything else on here? Nope. I think that's it. Okay. But I'll close out with that after we do one more round of Q&A. So, James, what do we have?
Jeffrey jumped in, said good evening. Jeffrey Fletcher.
Good evening, Jeffrey. Jeffrey.
And Trinity said, you say, quote, our neutral. I'm a naturally bubbly person. Is that a potential neutral? Smiley and content, kind of looking happy, but not targeted toward anything in particular.
That's not your neutral. Your neutral is when you are, let's give an example here. Your neutral is when you are in between things and just, I'll give you, for instance, right? You come to the dojo to get, you're going to come in for classes and stuff, and then you're going to go home that night, or you come in for a seminar and you stay for the weekend, then you're going to go home or whatever, right? But in between the car and the dojo door, you're not thinking about anything. You just like walk into the door, come in, whatever, before we start bantering and whatnot. Or you go, oh, before I forget, I need to go to the car and get my stuff or whatever. And you're doing that thing. That's your neutral. Okay. Now, do you have a neutral baseline when you are interacting with people generally? Yeah, that's that bubbly thing. Okay. So which one do you need when you're trying to not give away that you're paying attention to somebody or watching them? Because when you do that, you get quiet, and most people do this. You try not to project that you're doing what you're doing. And so that, just like when we give mixed messages to an attacker, right? Their brain has to slow down to try to sort things out. We do the same thing. We slow down and whatnot. So the pacing of our speech slows down. We become more articulate, or our body stops moving, right? Because we're trying to process things more up here. And so we're giving things away. Okay. So you have to explore, you have to watch you more than other people. And you have to take smaller snapshots than the I'm a naturally, giggly, bubbly person kind of thing, because you aren't always that. Okay. Hopefully that helped. What else, James?
She just asked dissociated with a question mark.
No, if you get dissociated, then like I can tell, right? If you're really pensive and you're trying to present that you're fine, but you're not. And I always look over and go, what's up? What's going on? And, when somebody says, no, nothing, right? No, I'm fine, right? If the pitch goes up, they're straining, even a little bit, they're straining to negate that and to try to force you to, again, I don't mean this aggressively, but it's a subconscious attempt to force the belief that everything is fine. Okay. Because when you are fine, you just go, huh? What? Oh, no. Do I look off? That kind of thing, right? Because that's naturally perplexed. Right? But I wouldn't ask if I didn't detect a change. Right? James, how often do I do that when somebody comes into the dojo and it looks like they've had a bad day? We can all tell. You having a bad day? No, I'm fine. Why? Well, then stop looking like you're having a bad day.
It's about 3 steps inside the door.
I have had students in the past that I've called them on. I didn't call them on anything. I just pointed out something that they were projecting, and I say, it's we try to hide behind these facades, and we may think that that's working with most people, but what's happening is they're accepting it, but they can feel that something is off, right? So there's a trust issue there or whatever. But for those of us who can see it, then especially when it comes to insecurities and fears and those kind of things, right? Because you have fewer people in the world who need to see those, because they can't help you if they aren't basing that help on fact. If they're basing it on stories, right? What we want them to help us with, or whatever, right? But there's those of us, I include myself, that can exploit it just as much as we are there to help. I prefer to help. I would never exploit it unless and you would never know it, right? Because I don't use this stuff on anybody that I'm, that I love or care about, or I'm trying to help and whatnot, right? If I'm using this stuff on, just trust that if I'm using this stuff on you, one, you will never know it. Okay. And two, I'm burning bridges. There is no making up afterwards. Okay? And this is not just for trend. This is for everybody. Okay. Most people tend to use knowledge like that nefariously. Okay. So, but either way, it's, but I've mentioned those things, and I never see that student ever again. So I have to be very judicious in my eking out of little lessons or those little things, because people say they want the truth. People say they are seeking the truth. But for most people, that's only so long as it, one, doesn't involve them, two, is not uncomfortable, right? And three, does not expose wounds that they don't want the world or anybody to see. Okay? So it's all cool as long as I can, learn truth as far as it affects everybody else, which is why in the pre-Mikyo training programs, I always talk about ego from a neutral standpoint, or there are people who kind of thing, right? The closer people get to actually doing Mikyo full on, that's when I start to leak out way more of the, I know, ego's a bitch, right? But when you, right? Anyway, I could name names, but I won't, because they'll do this. Or the shoulders will roll in, because they're all protective kind of things. What else?
Greg said body language is so related to Kamae, as well as mental focusing, a big topic. Good info here today.
Good stuff. Good stuff. The more you study Kamae, the better you will get at using yours in the dojo, out in the world all the time. But the more and more difficult it will be. And again, we need to get away from these Kamae with names, right? As starting points, but the harder it will be for people to lie to you, to mask intent and those kind of things. Right. So, all right. So let me just jump over to the little end here. So the exercise, right? Again, I want you to train a Kamae you've been using without knowing it. Okay. So maybe Ichimonji, maybe Hicho, maybe a version of Seigan no Kamae. But it could just be Shizen, right? when I say that you're using it without knowing it, this could be on the training floor, or it could just be one that you just naturally gravitate to. I don't want you to be using one that you're just randomly picking, or that you've just learned or whatever, because you're going to be, there's going to be a disconnect, because you need to focus on form or intent or whatever. What I want you to do is use one that you're just really, really, really comfortable at using, no matter how much thought you've given to it in the past or anything like that. Okay. But what I want you to feel, right, is what emotional state it amplifies in you. Okay. So when you do it, how does it make you feel? How does it make you more confident? Does it make you more aggressive? Does it make you, don't think about what it's supposed to be when you take up that, okay? Because there's two ways to work this side of things. Okay. The mind and emotions drives the form, and this is why the Godai no Nin and the Goshinbo and the Kuji work the way they do. The body movement and posture and whatnot can affect the emotions. Okay. I was in a business training program for 3 years one time. And when I did my weekly coaching thing, right, I dressed as though I were going to a business meeting, or I was going to like a coaching mastermind with like a mentor way up there, right? Always dressed in a suit, that kind of thing. So I dressed that way. I would never dress anything less than a polo shirt that wasn't, I guess they were monogrammed for the dojo, but a business suit, slacks, and nice shoes, right? Something like I would be okay going to a semi-formal, but a little dressed down business casual, I guess, right? That kind of thing, or more. Okay. So I could show up business button down shirt. And these were the days before Zoom. So my coach was never going to see me. Okay. Because the reality is that dressing certain ways make us feel certain ways. Some people absolutely feel like shit when they're wearing a suit. Okay. Well, why is that? Well, because they've determined that they're a certain way. But we dress up to go to certain things. We go dress up to go to I know less and less people do these days, and it just looks like shit, because this is the way I'm going, and they're going to accept me as I am, but it's not about me. It's their fucking day, right? Funeral, wedding, what? Excuse my language. I apologize, YouTube. Anyway, and so it's not just about self-respect. It's also about, like, are we honoring traditions? And I don't want to have any fucking arguments about, well, the tradition came from here. It was made up by, I don't, this is obviously somebody who is not going to be able to adapt to critical situations, because they can't even fucking adapt to cultural situations or familiar situations or whatever, right? Because it's so much about themselves that they can't see how much of a freaking target they've made themselves in an attempt to be the philosopher that is beyond all that shit. Well, if you were beyond it, then you should be more like a chameleon than a fucking target. But maybe that's just my biased opinion based on what I've pulled out of Ninjutsu training. Who am I to say, right? Anyway, how does that amplify? What does it amplify? What state does it amplify for you? Okay. And then I want you to ask yourself, what would this Kamae mean on a battlefield? What would it say to an angry spouse? To a boss? And finally, what would it say to your own fear? Now, I'm not saying that you're going to go to your spouse and take up Seigan or whatever, but remember, that's the body's manifestation in a physical combat kind of thing, right? But what would that say? Okay. So, one last little thought to leave you with before we go, right? When you understand the hidden purpose of Kamae, you realize posture doesn't protect you, presence does. You can take up the most violent, aggressive, confident, whatever Kamae, or what it's supposed to be, right? Like Bobby, right? There's a line in the sand. Cross that line, I'll kill you, right? Ichimonji no Kamae, right? If you touch me, I'll kill you. Whatever, right? You can take up that Kamae, but if your presence doesn't speak that message, he's coming. Right? So the last thing I'll leave you with is that the study of Kamae is the study of full integration and authenticity. It's one of the 7 marks of an enlightened mind. Being authentic. Okay. It's the it's a synthesis and absorption or connection, or it's the it's not organization. It's the reassimilation, I guess, right? Of the 3 aspects of ourselves. So that we're not sending mixed messages unless we're intending to send mixed messages, but we know that that's going to cause confusion, hesitation, whatever, which if we're looking for agreement from somebody, probably shouldn't be sending those messages. Okay. If we're trying to confuse them, slow them down, cause hesitation. Yeah, absolutely. Right. But how do you do that intentionally without looking like you're doing it intentionally? Okay. If he knows what you're doing, he can beat it, and it's not needed to. Okay. It needs to look absolutely normal. But what's normal? Okay. Just like thinking outside the box. Most people miss the most important piece: defining the box. You can't think outside the box if you don't know the boundaries of the box. See, it's easy to regurgitate lessons. Not so easy to live the lessons and to understand the lessons. All right, James, last call here, and then we'll wrap this up.
I do not see anything new.
Cool. All right. In that case, we're going to wrap this up. I've got another early day tomorrow, so I will talk to everybody again real soon. James, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's it, guys. We'll see you next time. See, Trin just had it pop in her head, and I bet everybody else that's a regular did it too, because I say it the same way every time. See you next time on KUDEN.
Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.